And we are delighted to welcome you back, Ellen Siegel, for another week of this course. Thank you.
I am more delighted than you are to be back here and to see that we haven't lost too many people to the doom and gloom of climate change. The homework assignment last week was to go through the list of possible organizations you might be interested in and look at the website, and if you could and would, pick one to join. They're almost all free. So I am going to ask the folks in the Zoomers to post in chat, what did you look up and what did you think? And for anyone in this room, this is the chance to say, I didn't do my homework, teacher. So
maybe, Ellen, if anyone calls anything out, if you'll just repeat it, that way the
I would be happy to do that. So who did look at the list, who did open one or two websites? Yes, Laura, thank you. Do you want to tell what you looked at? Actually, do you want to just come up and say it so the Zoomer roomers can see you too?
Well, that will work. I don't want you venturing too many times over that, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I looked, my major focus was trying to find out ones that had, what can we do if we live in Gainesville and Alachua County, beyond the sort of things that that everybody does, like, recycling, composting, but other things that we can do as a community, sort of as an organization. So the things I looked at, one of them was the League of Women Voters has a group which is called Natural Resources Committee, and I didn't really quite know what they do. I joined it, but haven't heard anything about that. Also, the one which was called the CCAC Citizens Climate Action Committee, and I went on their mailing list. And also, I joined the Climate Reality Project, this says supports climate education, advocacy, and action in Alachua County. So those were the three that I found that seemed to be very focused on it. So I'm just sort of waiting to see what comes back on those.
Wow, I would like a round of applause for Laura. You picked very well for Alachua County. You really did. Thank you. You really set the bar. Okay. Folks in the Zoom room, your chance to enter chat. Tell us which sites you looked at. Hi, Pushka, please move up. And tell us what you looked at this week. Who else took a minute to go online? Anne. I'm going to bring the mic to you. You can holler and I'll repeat, of course.
All right. I looked at the list. I declined to go in any of them because I did a water sample instead. And that's my major interest. And I don't want to take away from any time that I have available to do that. Now, a sample was brought to me on Friday. And for anyone that's interested, the salinity was 170 centimeters at the site where the water was taken.
Hold that thought. Anne is preferring to work on water sampling, and she is a water sampler specialist, and a sample was brought to her, and the salinity was 117.
170.
170. What is normal?
Well, that larger the number, the more clarity there is to the water, the purer it is.
The larger the number, the clearer the water. So relatively speaking, is 170 a good number in the sample you saw?
That's nice.
And where did the sample come from?
From the dock at the Whitney Laboratory.
From the dock at the Whitney Laboratory. So that's kind of good news if I'm reading into what you're saying. Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you. Okay. Who else looked online, looked at a site? Okay, guys, you got to amp it up. That's why I'm teaching these classes for free. Yes, ma'am, Mallory. Do you want to come up?
Watch the cable.
You're taller than I am, so.
It'll angle down.
Okay. I didn't really look into any new possibilities because I already am inundated with about, I think, probably, 200 organizations that send me their newsletters, their requests for contributions, their you didn't remember to renew your membership this year, please send us money. But that's Nature Conservancy, which my husband and I have been members of since 1965, I think, something like that. My husband, in fact, around that time in 1970, had an exhibition of his artwork in San Francisco, and the proceeds went to the Nature Conservancy. So,
And what does the Conservancy do? Why is that one of those that you support?
I think they're best known for buying up land and preserving it and working with businesses. And I was really, one of the reasons we got involved with them was they work with the business community to try to rescue lands from development and do some really good things in that. But I'm also a member of, World Wildlife Federation and the Climate Reality Project and yada, yada, yada.
Already in. Okay. I would like a round of applause for Mallory because like you, I probably get not 200, but easily 60. And I cherry picked for our group. And just really, again, applaud Laura for picking the ones that are local.
Ellen?
Yeah.
Brigitte
Yeah.
says Alachua County Conservation Trust.
Okay, Brigitte, would you unmute, please, and tell us why you picked that one?
Basically, I just picked them because I've been hiking in places where they have hiking trails, and I've seen them with their outreach educational programs. So I like what they're doing.
Okay, listen, finding a group that does what you like is the key to this action. I like teaching, so that's what I'm doing. You don't see me running for county commission, right? Okay, we had one more?
Barb,
Okay.
on Zoom, if you'd like to unmute.
Yeah, Barb. Hey, Barb.
Hello. I have this week. I'm already I'm involved with watching and I'm a biologist and specialized in animal behavior and ecology. So I've been at Sweetwater Park watching the nesting and what's successful and what's not successful, and we're trying to watch and see what we might suggest for changes. I've also volunteered to do writing for Sweetwater Park. But what I did new this week, which was totally not Alachua County, as I'm getting involved with the Israel Conservation and helping with the helping people know what to help with in Israel. In other words, for years we've been told to plant trees. Well, you shouldn't be planting trees. And so I'm getting involved with that organization and trying to get people to understand what we should be helping with. So I won't go into it. It's a long story and a big project.
Okay, so I was focusing us a little bit local, a little bit national, and you've taken it international. So kudos to you, Barb. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, let's go ahead with the class today. Today's topic is it hot in here or is it me? Ready to go. Yeah. And to kick us off, I told a short story before class started about a friend named Ellen Siegel who went back to her maiden name. Her name's now Ellen Buxtell. She lives in High Springs, and I know her from Miami. And this is like not even worth turning the lights down because it's like this short, but go ahead. She's going to talk about, is it hot in here or is it me? Take it away, Ellen.
Is it hot in here, or is it me? My family thinks I'm crazy as can be. Well, my thermostat is broken, it feels like 103. Is it hot in here, or is it me?
Okay, so she's obviously talking about You know what she's talking about. So today we're going to cover a little more science, a few staggering statistics, at least staggering to me, some impacts of those statistics. And before you start to throw rotten tomatoes at me for scaring the you-know-what out of you, we will again close with what we can do right now, what you can do as individuals, and more importantly for this group as voters and political activists. And again, as I do every class, I invite you to listen with what startles you, something you didn't know, something you knew but is now reinforced, or something that pleased you or did not please you. And again, I want you to be able to take a return on your investment of time and money for this course, and then take that conversation a little bit wider. And that is actually a heads up on your homework. Next slide, please.
Is it hot?
Well, we could listen to her again. You can YouTube her. The whole song is very cute. Okay. So climate change is a medical emergency. It's a health crisis. It's a climate crisis. It's all over the world. It is stacking the deck against a healthy human population with vulnerable communities the most at risk. Climate change is the biggest health threat facing humanity, and this is the World Health Organization statement in 2021. Next slide. We've seen this before. We are assaulting that thin blue blanket around our planet by spewing more than 162 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into that thin blue shell that I've shown you several times. That blanket that encompasses us. We're treating it like an open sewer. This pollution includes methane. Normally I talk about carbon dioxide, but I want to introduce a little bit of fact about methane. Methane is masquerading as natural gas. There are some issues here in Gainesville around the University of Florida wanting to build a 50-year lifespan natural gas, AKA methane plant, write letters to the Board of Trustees. The City Commission has no power. It's a state issue, but you can communicate to the Board of Trustees that you are against that. Methane is 82.5 times more potent of a grabber of heat than carbon dioxide when you look at it over 20 years. Now, it does degrade much faster than carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide lasts hundreds of years. But guess what it degrades to? Take a wild ass guess. Carbon dioxide. Thank you, the other Ken. That is exactly correct. So that's what we're doing. Okay. Okay. We've seen this one before. Again, I point you to looking at the time clock on the bottom. Just want to remind us that Earth is getting hotter and that the past 5 years have been the warmest of the last 140 years. So is it hot in here or is it me? Yeah, this ends in 2019, but it's getting hotter. Next one, please. So we're going to look at this red, white, and blue graph a couple of times. Let me orient you to what you're seeing. Don't click yet. This is Northern Hemisphere. This is the summer. We're using the baseline average temperature of 1951 to 1980. You'll remember from the first class that we started really amping up burning of coal, oil, and gas about when I was born in 1949. So this is a baseline. It's not pre-industrial, it's already industrial. And you can see that the blue is cooler than average temperatures. The white at the top of the bell curve is average temperature, and then the red are warmer than average temperatures. Click on the slide, please. What's going to appear is a green hill. We're going to keep that green hill steady. That green hill is now demonstrating this slide. And now we're going to move forward in time, a decade, and you can see what's happening. you can see that this is beginning to shift. And this is Northern Hemisphere. That's us, folks. You can see in the lower right something that's appearing for the first time. If you look in the lower right, you see some blood red. That's the appearance of a statistically significant number of extremely hot days. Extremely hot days are measured as temperatures over 90 or 95 degrees. You live in Gainesville in the summer? Right. Next slide, please. Now we're going forward one more decade. Okay? Yeah, go ahead. Next slide, thanks. Okay? So you see our green baseline. This takes us to 2020. We're in 2023 already. In the last 20 years, you can see, last 20 years, you see that extremely hot days have become more numerous than all of the cooler than average and average days put together. And these extremely hot days have increased by more than 200 times. Ken, are you raising your hand? I can't tell. No, just wiggling your fingers. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you can see that the extreme temperature events used to cover a teeny portion of land, and now they're covering 22% of the land and going up. Is it hot in here or is it me? It's hot in here. The other thing that's happening that never happened is we're seeing places in the far north, like British Columbia and the northwestern part of the United States, temperatures of almost 116 degrees Fahrenheit, 108 degrees Fahrenheit, 116 degrees Fahrenheit again. These are the most anomalous heat events scientists have ever recorded on Earth. It doesn't get that hot up north. Okay, next slide, please. The other fact that you want to be aware of is nighttime temperatures are rising faster than daytime temperatures in most of the world. Plants, animals, and humans need the nights to cool down to recover from the hot days. This is a big problem, especially for, forgive me, us vulnerable seniors. I know we don't feel like that, but we are, and infants, and people with pre-existing conditions. So this is one of the health consequences that bears watching. So I'm gonna, yeah, I know, it's like cover your eyes. It's bad, Maui. You put this in one of your books, which I haven't finished reading yet. Can we stop share for a second and look at the Zoom, folks? So I'm gonna invite you, before I go into the rest of the program, to throw into the chat for the Zoomers and here in the room for the roomers, what do you think might be some of the health impacts of the fact it really is hot in here? It really isn't you. Take some swags, some scientific wild ass guesses. Okay? Zoomers, you can raise your hand or unmute and just yell it out. Yes, ma'am. Wait. Jack and Nancy. Thank you. Nancy. Great. Nancy is saying, and correctly so, most of the world does not have access to air conditioning. If nighttime temperatures don't cool off, they will have trouble sleeping, which in itself is a health issue. And I would add that sometimes in inner city areas where crime is a problem, people don't want to sleep with their windows open because of crime. And so the houses get hotter and hotter. Yes, I saw another couple of hands here. What else do you think is an impact of this excess heat? What else is going to happen because the world is hotter? What? Just take a guess. Laura, thanks.
Change in migration of birds and butterflies and other animals that are, and I assume also probably killing off some of them.
Wow. Okay. So Laura says there's going to be a change in migration of birds, butterflies, plants. And in fact, we're going to look at migration of the things that make us sick coming north. Thank you. So that's a health impact. Pushka, and then the other Ken, and then
Larry.
Larry. Okay. Pushka. Yeah. Okay. Great. Pushka is adding crop failures and famine because the heat is causing, and we'll see that in a slide, both drought and extreme rain, and both of those make it difficult to grow crops. Okay, thank you. Who did I say
Ellen,
was?
there's a couple here on chat.
Okay, let me finish the folks in the room, and then we're going to come to chat. Who did I miss? Other Ken, and then Larry. Okay, the other Ken is pointing out what we looked at class 2, which is the hurricane. What's with all these storms? All that heat is evaporating more water, which is causing slower, more intense, intensifying, faster, and wetter hurricanes. And then Larry? Wow. Okay, Larry is adding that the boundaries of glacial lakes will fail because of the melt, and there will be massive flooding. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the Zoom room.
Okay, Jackie says decrease in outdoor activities for exercise or fun.
Wow. Okay, good. That's good, Jackie. Our health is going to suffer because we just can't walk our dog at 9 o'clock in the morning. It has to be at 5 a.m.
And then Paul says there's a significant increase in cases of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and deaths from these conditions.
Exactly. Thank you, Paul. Well said. What else? That's what we've got. Okay. Anyone else on the in the Zoomers? That's it? Pushka.
Human migration.
Okay, Pushka is adding human migration in a massive scale. Okay, class is over. You nailed them. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, let's go back to the program. Thank you, Julianne. Okay, so what if it's getting hotter? One more slide. Okay. Let's see if we nailed them all. So just click, and then click, and then click. Yeah. So you did really well. That's why I said you can go home now. We're going to look at some details on it, and then we're going to look at what can be done. So I think the only one we really missed was the allergies, asthma, and lung disease, which is actually a big deal for people who have asthma or allergies, which is about 90% of my friends and family. Okay, next one. And who's most vulnerable? No surprise here. Pushka mentioned agricultural workers. Okay. You know what didn't get on that slide was the mass migration, and that is a big deal. Right now, the mass migrations are internal to countries, except for the dry corridor, which is Nicaragua, Guatemala, Mexico, and they're coming north. So, okay, next slide. This is a cartoon about what the heat does that I mentioned, but here's a cartoon about the heat causes evaporation from the ocean, which causes more rain, but it also is faster evaporation from soil, which is where the crop failures come in. Okay. Yep, next slide. This is no surprise. We didn't talk about in the impacts more fires. Anybody here have family or friends in California? Wow. Okay. Yeah. I think I have to add it to that slide. I have a sister in LA, and you can see the correlation between heat and fire. The temperature is in the yellow and fires are in the red. And it's like no surprise. With this high temperature and drought, we see more fires. Next slide. It's a lot of people, a lot of impact. And even if you aren't killed or burnt, when you lose your home, there's a very big mental health economic impact on you. And so I'm going to guess that if I asked who here knows someone who has lost a home to flood, fire, or hurricane, some of you will raise your hand. Yeah, wow, more than I would have thought. Me too. One of my best friends in the Berkeley fire, I mentioned that in one of our earlier programs. Next slide, please. There is an impact of the smoke from the forest fires that goes way beyond California, oddly enough. It's associated with a lot of health problems. It correlates with an increase in COVID and COVID deaths, and it is worse than normal particulate air pollution. So there's a number, we talked about some other numbers. The number here is 2.5. That's 2.5 microns is the measurement of the soot that gets in your lungs and makes you sick. And that's part of the soot. The other numbers we mentioned, of course, was 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius for the goal for keeping temperature down. And spoiler alert, next week we're going to look at how to get the planet down to 2 or 1.5. That's next week. But right now we're looking at the impact of the fires. Next slide, please. This kind of surprised me because I don't live in New York, that the smoke from California is impacting New York City. And I'm sorry, you're having a reaction.
Having lived in New York, you can see this stuff coming out of the air constantly. It is absolutely filthy.
Okay, Ken is a New York migrant, lived there, and is pointing out that he could see it coming out of the air and it was filthy. Mallory.
Comment about art history. I was reading an interesting article yesterday online about the fact that they've been realizing that Impressionism was a result of air pollution.
Okay, this is cool, Zoomers. I know you didn't hear Mallory. She was reading an online article that says Impressionism was partly supported by the fact that air pollution was making things kind of hazy. Did I paraphrase what you're saying? Okay, well, come on up.
This is intriguing.
That is intriguing.
As an art historian, this is something that really caught my attention because we've thought, well, Impressionism, Monet, and the other Impressionists were just playing with light. But what they were talking about, and even might have been Monet, was saying, "Oh, I'm so disappointed there isn't enough smoke in the air today." To really give that interesting quality of shadow and light that I was trying to capture. So there's a correlation that the art historians have found between year to year to year. The Impressionists got more and more smoky as they went along. And let me just bring something up from a modern point of view. I don't know if you're familiar with Margaret Tolbert's artwork. Margaret is a diver, and so she has done a lot of work underwater, and she's also, her paintings are about water, and particularly about the springs. And Margaret told me that she didn't really realize the degradation of the springs over time until she saw a retrospective of her own work and saw from year to year how the paintings went from turquoise to green.
Wow, wow, wow.
On Zoom, Barb, I see your hand up. Is it a new comment or did I forget to put your hand down?
Barb?
Yep, I just had to grab my phone. Actually, it was a comment from a little while. I didn't know if you wanted me to bring this up or not about the the changing in the plant species around here, and also the need to change agricultural plants.
Well, you've just done it, and I thank you. Yeah, there's changes in the phenology of plants and animals where they are moving, and maybe the insects that pollinate our food crops are not matching the blooming parts of the plants. It's a whole area of study. Thank you, Barb. Anyone else on the Zoomers?
Not on Zoom, but.
Okay, Margaret?
My daughter is a wildlife ecologist, PhD, and she tells me that we are all inhaling microplastics. They're floating all over, and the whales, that's their food these days. They inhale all of that.
Okay, so we're branching off into a side effect. Thank you, Margaret. Margaret says her daughter, who's a wildlife ecologist and is studying these things, it's documented that we are all inhaling microplastics. We are with the clothes we wear too, which is a little bit freaky to think about. And that things that are baleen, like the whales, are ingesting things they should not be ingesting. Is there anyone here who's not aware that plastics are made from petroleum, which is oil? Yeah, no, nobody's not aware of that. So it's another reason to kill fossil fuels. Thank you, Margaret. Okay, next slide. Oh, yeah, let's go back to the slideshow. Okay. This one surprised me. I don't know if it surprises you. I didn't know that air pollution is linked to dementia and cognitive decline. That's kind of like, I'm already slipping, so how bad is it going to get? Okay, next slide, please. Of course you can make a comment, Ann.
I was in an airplane the Saturday after the 9/11 crash into the Twin Towers. I looked across at that site. There was an almost opaque cloud of particulate in the air at that point, to the point that I thought if I could put my hand out of the airplane and touch that, it would leave an imprint. It was that dense.
Wow. After 9/11, the Saturday after, Anne was on an airplane and the cloud of particulate matter around the World Trade Center was so dense that she had the sense if she could reach out the window and touch it, her hand would make an impact on it. People were breathing that. Ken?
I remember the first time that we flew into LA.
We're talking, okay, Ken number one is talking about flying into LA.
This was back probably 1997, early.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a gruesome sight that the pilot apologized to the passengers for taking us into this flight.
Wow, okay, so this was 70s and on an airplane, and the pilot apologized for taking folks into this soup. We need the Clean Air Act. This is, for those of you who are politically active, there's a lot of things going on with EPA you could get yourselves up to speed on. Larry. Okay, we've got a comedian in the back row here. Larry is contributing if breathing polluted air contributes to cognitive decline. Stop breathing. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate the giggle. Okay, Nancy? Okay. All right, so we've got a couple that was driving across country in the 70s and had the same experience that Ken's airplane did of seeing a cloud of driving into. Don't breathe this stuff, right? Okay, next slide. This is one of my favorites. I had, well, she's 30 now, but when she was 5, I went up to Providence, Rhode Island. Anita knows her, Leia, my little 5-year-old niece, who's very athletic. And I was going to babysit her for the afternoon and take her to the park. And my sister, Deborah, gave me her fanny pack with her inhaler and an EpiPen and said, do not let her run because she has asthma. The number of children that have asthma is staggering, and the air quality is not so good for them. So that was my personal connection with this slide. If you take a box of air, this was another number that startled me. In the year 2000, that box of air had 8,455 pieces of pollen. Okay. Projecting business as usual, my favorite awful phrase. We don't do anything to cut emissions and we don't do anything to sequester carbon out of the air. If we don't do the things we need to do, the projection, not a prediction, a projection, is 21,733 pieces of pollen in that same box of air. Now, if you've got allergies, this is a problem. So that's a huge increase. And why is that? It gets to something Pushka said earlier. What happens when things are warmer, spring comes earlier, plants grow faster, they release more pollen. Next slide, please. Yeah, keep going, please. Thank you. I couldn't believe this picture either. Yeah. That's Durham, North Carolina. And pollen season is starting earlier and earlier. They're getting more extreme because of the extreme heat. Okay, next slide. I know I'm not focusing enough in this course on equity and environmental justice. I know I'm not. And I know many of you care very deeply about people less fortunate than we are. So I'm not bombarding you with the statistics. This slide is just one example of the ways that extreme heat is impacting people who cannot protect themselves the way we can and do not have the same access to health care that we do and do not have access to air conditioning or safe jobs that we had. Thank you. Next one. Okay, so let's change gears. We didn't talk at great lengths about what's happening with insects. These are called vector-borne diseases. It's just jargon for something carries a disease and bites us and then we get it. So ticks and mosquitoes are known as vectors. And those diseases, as you can see from the slide, are increasing. Next slide. Yeah, keep going. There we go. Okay, so this is an animation of tropical diseases coming for us. The diseases are moving towards each pole, and air travel is one reason why, people are bringing things around the world. That is true, but the conditions are changing due to the climate, and these diseases can take root and then become embedded and endemic in a community. And I lived in Miami when Zika first appeared. It was like, who ever heard of Zika? And it was really very terrifying. And I worked in the environmental education program at Everglades National Park, and we had to cancel programs because parents wouldn't want their children out in the park where the Aedes aegypti, forgive me for mispronouncing their name, that particular species of mosquito was endemic and could carry West Nile and Zika. So it had a big impact just on what people did outside. And I think Nancy had made that point. Somebody had made that point about we can't do things outside we wanted to do. So forgive me if it wasn't you. Yeah, well, why wouldn't it be? So look at the things you can get. Whew, really terrible. Okay, next slide. So we've looked at air, both smoke and pollen. We've looked at bugs, not in detail. Now we can look at water. And with increased rain bombs and flooding of major cities in the United States, never mind around the world, here's a suite of waterborne diseases that are infectious. Cholera is the one that gets in the news a lot. And Pakistan has a problem with that. Nigeria has a problem with that. And parts of the United States will have problems with this. So, next slide. Yeah, bats getting a bad rap. But they probably are the ones that brought us COVID-19, and they may very well bring us the next pandemic. About 75% of the new diseases are what they call zoonotic, meaning they come from an animal. Generally, the animal is a bat, and they jump from the animal to humans. And why is this happening based on climate change? It's like, what has climate change got to do with this? Well, if you think about what we're doing to the planet, and you think about the fact that we used to have a large swath of tropical jungle between humans and these animals, and as we deforest our jungles, these animals have nowhere to go, is one problem. So never mind that we're burning the trees that we cut down, which adds to the carbon dioxide, et cetera, et cetera. We looked at that. We're making the neighborhood is getting tighter and tighter. And so we are getting closer and closer to the bats and they to us. So that's one problem. The other problem, and this was another, I don't have a slide for this one, excuse me. Believe it or not, the wild animal trade is like a big deal. And you start collecting pangolins and bats and other exotic animals and moving them around the world, and they're carrying these viruses. That's another way that they are spreading. I was shocked to learn that the wild animal, exotic animal trade is the fourth largest illegal source of money in the world. The first one is, of course, drugs. The second is prostitution. Honestly, I forget what the third one is, sex trade. Next slide, please. Not just yet. Okay, so what if it's getting hotter? Let's go ahead, just keep clicking through them. This is a repeat of what we built before, and I see from this class I need to add a couple more things. Again, my wish is you take something from this class, and your homework assignment is to take something from this session or previous sessions and share it to one or two other people that you haven't been talking to. I want them to be people who know you and love you and trust you. I don't want you to take on the climate denier or someone, well, you can if you want, but that's not your assignment. Because next class is solutions and the last class is communication, and I want to begin to build some of your input for that communication. So it may go well, it may go badly, but I would like you to take something that startled you, surprised you, shocked you, made you happy, whatever. You had a reaction, an emotional reaction, and I want you to take that. So this is a preview of the homework assignment. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, take a look at that. Just take a look at that slide. These are what are called externalities when you're talking about climate change. This is the cost of carbon after we burn it. You may not be aware that in the United States alone, via tax subsidies, direct subsidies, beneficial laws, relaxed standards, lack of enforcement, we are supporting the extractive industries to the tune of $649 billion a year in the United States alone. I don't have a global figure for you. $649 billion a year to support the industries that throw this crap in the air. And our lifestyles depend on it. They have made us addicts. I know I sound a bit overly dramatic, but this is what's happening. So if you add up all the costs of the damage done, it would be way cheaper to stop now. If there's a forest fire coming at your home, wouldn't you try to put the fire out? And then wouldn't you try to fix whatever damage was done? So billions and billions and billions of dollars on the back end, or a few billions of dollars on the front end and some political will. This is a grassroots time in our lives. Our government is not doing everything it can because it can't, because it is owned by commercial farming, large agriculture, and fossil fuel industry. I just want you to know that and be sensitive to that. Okay? Okay, so you know how I do it. I go, okay, that's pretty heavy. So if you like, and you could stand up. Let's take a breath. A yoga breath. Zoomers, you too. Yeah. Shake your head. Clear the deck. Thank you, thank you. Okay. Now let's look at what we've got. What can we do? Okay? Right. Okay. So, yeah, thanks. Okay. This is a click 3 times, so hang on. Right. So the fossil fuels are a dead end. If I haven't made any other point in this class besides they're a dead end and humans are to blame. Yeah. Okay, that's cool, huh? All those little dots, those are all the new coal plants that have been proposed and defeated. So communities are saying, no way. That's good. Next click. Okay. Okay, the yellow ones are going to be partially retired or fully retired by 2030. So 2030 is only 7 years from now, so that's good. And the last click is, wow, cool, huh? But look how many coal plants we have in the United States. Larry, do you have a comment? No, okay, yeah, okay. So this is progress. This is local utilities responding to this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make financial sense either. So that's pretty cool. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, right, they canceled. Yeah, okay, next slide. Okay, gray bar is the investment of the oil companies in fossil fuel, and the green bar is their commitment to renewables. Go ahead and click on this slide, please. Yeah. Oh, okay, back one. That's fine. That's okay. Okay, reactions. Hands raised, Zoomers, chat, please. Reactions. I hear one from Julianne. Eesh. Not enough. Hello. Not nearly enough. This is called greenwashing. And if you look at Shell, for example, their website, they've got this great thing. I think it's called Sky. And you read it and you go, oh, wow, I'm going to go shop at Shell every single time. Tripled their investments to 4%. Right. It is a good sign. It's a good sign. And if you are sensitive to advertising and you see greenwashing, you can challenge them. And for those of you, I didn't put, there's so many things I could put on the list of things you could go look at. But if you're interested in money and following the money, there is a website called Stop the Pipeline. And that is committed to having banks stop lending money to these people. Because if they don't have money to invest in more oil rigs, they will have to do something else. Stop the money pipeline. Okay, next slide. This one's cool. So, does recycling solve the plastics problem? This is 4 clicks, Julianne. The first one. Okay. This is all the plastics ever made. Next click. That's how much gets actually recycled. And you should recycle. Everybody should recycle, but that's what we're actually doing. Okay, next slide. Some of it gets burnt, so there's some of those plastic particles that you mentioned that we are breathing. Next part. This is what ends up in landfill or litter. And, yeah. Some of it's still in use. So I see Sarah's not here today, but God bless Sarah. She is the reduce, reuse, recycle queen of Alachua County. No plastic leaves her house. Okay, so next slide. So it's something to do. Okay, here's something really good. Let's take a look at renew. Oh yeah, Mallory.
Plastic use. There's also online a company called Hold On that is producing items like plastic bags, only they're made out of compostable material.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
So if you want the plastic is the reason there's so much of it is it's useful.
And it's cheap. Okay, so Mallory is sharing some resources that there's a store in Thornbrook called Beyond Plastic, Life Without Plastic, and a website called Hold On. These are things we can look at, and I'm writing them down and we'll put them, yeah.
Got this, compost service that's available through Northwood Green and also the city is doing it. And they corroborated the fact that the Hold On plastic does break down, that it is compostable. So they were very excited about that. They started using Hold On bags for their produce.
Okay, great. So the Hold On plastic has been vetted and it actually does break down. It really is compostable. Sometimes you see compostable, but you have to send it to a special facility, which you would not have in your backyard. Margaret. Okay, so the question is, let's see if someone here knows. I do not. If anyone here, we have got a lot of scientists here, what silicone is made of. Margaret, would you research that and report next week? Thank you, I appreciate that. That would be good. Do we have any questions from the Zoomers? Okay. Yeah, okay, we're good. Okay, so one of the big winners is wind capacity. A really big winner. Yes, you have to invest some fossil fuel energy to make the turbines at the moment. Margaret? The fisheries are unhappy with the big turbines now because it's interrupting, I guess, the fisheries. Okay, there's onshore and offshore, and I guess that's a conversation that we have to have about who does what. Okay, so the point of this slide, next slide, please, is that the goal for wind energy was exceeded. And can we have the next slide, please? Look at the cost, how much it's gone down since 2009, 12 years, going dramatically fallen to produce wind energy. So wind is a winner, onshore and offshore. Next slide, please. Here's another interesting statistic. Enough solar energy reaches us every hour to fill our energy needs for a full year. I mean, the sun has a lot of energy coming down and hitting us. We're not going to run out of it. So why aren't we using it? So next slide, please. And here's progress of solar. This is a 2-click slide. And one more click, actually. Imagine that. And look at the cost. And I understand that Oak Hammock has solar for some of the building, I guess as much as was reasonable or possible to do. So that's really pretty. These, I believe, are global. Okay. The point is, you can't say it costs too much to fix this problem. It costs too much not to fix this problem. And it just costs too much. Let's go back to that slide with the cash register. It costs too much not to fix this problem, let alone all of the hurt that we're doing to people who are not as lucky as we are. Okay, next slide, please. So this is really very interesting, this next slide. Yeah, please. Yeah. There are only 8 states that do not allow you to resell to your neighbors your excess solar generated electricity. These 8 states have a stranglehold on your rooftop solar because the only customer to sell your excess electricity to is your utility. It's called net metering. And actually, I will commend our governor, with whom I usually don't agree on anything, for vetoing the net metering restrictive bill. He was going to drop the price we get paid. So if you are paying, well, you're not, I don't think, do you pay your own electricity bills, or it's embedded in OCAMIC? Yeah, okay. Well, then never mind, doesn't matter. Next slide, please. The other thing that's...
I understand it was a challenge to put the solar panels on originally. GRU, our local municipal power company, was actually pretty resistant to doing that.
Yeah, yes. Ken is offering the fact that GRU initially was pretty resistant to us putting solar panels on our homes, which you can understand. You can kind of understand it. But they do charge a connection fee, and I think they have a right to charge a connection fee, and whatever. Okay. Thank you, Ken. The other thing that's happening is all these car manufacturers are phasing in electric vehicles. I mean, pick a car. Okay, next one. Okay, and something else surprising and good about Florida is in Manatee County, they are installing batteries. The objection you hear from GRU, and this is something very big about the Citizens Climate Action Committee and the League of Women Voters Natural Resources Committee, Laura mentioned, and that she signed up for. GRU is not acting with urgency. I've been on several of the meetings of both committees with the GRU representative, a gentleman, lovely gentleman, very smart, many years in the utility industry, all on the fossil fuel side, named Eric Walters. And their point is, we are not going to be cutting edge. There are too many restrictions on us going renewable. We will wait. We will wait. We will wait. So they're not motivated enough. But if there was, because they are a municipal utility, which Ken just said, pressure on our city commission, the City of Gainesville Commission, which is a manageable commission, 4 commissioners and a good mayor. You can write letters, you can call, you can send an email and say, hey, we really need to get some urgency, light some fires, some fossil fuel fires under the GRU butt and get going on solar. Now, there are a lot of problems. Where are you going to put the solar arrays? And the last 2 times they've tried to put them, they put them in BIPOC neighborhoods, and the neighbors felt that they were having, industry crammed down their throat. This is a social science problem. Everybody wins with solar. Okay, next slide. But we're doing something good here, okay? So guess what? Cities are taking action. As of a year ago, 758 cities were members of something called Race to Zero, where the cities say we're going to go to net zero emissions by 2050, and we're going to have a plan in place by 2030, and Gainesville is one of the cities, okay? Some city solutions, next slide. Oops, 2:30. I want you to do something for me. Cool pavements, cooling centers, tree canopies, rooftop gardens, bus stop shelters. Those are all things we can do and should do. Next one. Okay, this is for those of you with investment portfolios. The red line is the S&P energy sector. It's not doing so good. The blue line is the S&P without the energy sector. It's doing really well. You should divest your portfolios. Talk to your investment manager. Next slide, please. And click on this. Many companies are making the same commitment the cities are. And the next slide. You can, as Melanie said last week, have empathy for the youngsters. And next slide. I already talked about your homework, and I do have, if you would be willing, let's see, Anita, would you help? Would you, everybody who doesn't have a writing implement, you would pass out a pencil, and I'm going to get, are you mobile? Pat? Yeah. I have some index cards.
Ellen, is this something I could possibly email to the other participants or?
Yeah, you totally can.
Okay.
Thank you. And I dropped your. Okay, thanks for hanging in for an extra minute. Hold that thought in because I've run over. Two things. One is, can the Zoom roomers give a thumbs up so Julianne can see if you can see this?
They can't, but what I'll do is I'll email it.
All right. There is a program Monday, February 13, in the Upper Commons at 11 o'clock. Students from St. Patrick's School are displaying their creations called trash formations, and they are using recycled and reused items for art. And there's a picture here of an ibis in a pond that I really would love to see in person. So I'll leave this up here so you can come see it. Julianne was kind enough to do the recap of today's class and the homework assignment already. And you can see the homework assignment, which I've already talked about. I want you to go talk to someone who loves you, trusts you, and likes you. I'm hoping everybody has somebody like that in their life. Could be, no. Well, very funny, very funny. So I'd like you to do that. Okay, here's the index card. Everybody have one? Okay. Dottie, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, on one side, I want you to write, so far in this class, this course, for as much as you've been, what's gone well for you, whatever it is. What did you like? What's gone well? So one side is what's gone well. A sentence. I want you to do it now. You're not getting out here without giving me a card. Where's the card? Wait a minute. You gave them all away.
Dottie, you're hired.
My card passers do not do a good job. Who doesn't have one? Dottie, thanks for your help. Zoomers, you can do this anonymously. I won't look at the chat because I don't have access to it. So if you want to write what's gone well for you and you don't want to wait for an email, go ahead and put it in chat. And on the other side of the card, guess what? What's not going well for you? Is it the class too long, too technical, not technical enough, too interactive, not interactive enough, slides good, slides bad? So on one side, what's working, the other side, what's not working.
So we can leave some time, Ellen, for people to keep filling them out. I can
Sure.
share that online. Do you have some final thoughts that
Okay.
we can?
Well, my final thoughts are this is class 4 of 6.
Mhm.
And I am hoping and praying that the experience has lit a little fire for a little more action under some of you. And I will share with Nita's permission a conversation we had before class that she is on the interior design committee and has brought up the issue of having sustainable and healthy options for the kind of redecorating and redesigning that's going to happen. So that's kind of important because you're going to be living with those things until the next 18-year refurbish. So, and of course the issue is, well, those things cost more. But if you go back to that slide about the cost of carbon, not doing it costs more. So you just have to be able to help other people connect the dots. So thank you for your good work, Nita, on that.
I
And
wanted to add that in the February issue of National Geographic, there is an article about, in particularly Africa, building with mud brick for homes or concrete. And it's a moot discussion on that. And in the article, it said that 8% of carbon dioxide is generated by making of concrete.
isn't that unbelievable? Absolutely correct, because concrete uses massive amounts of water and limestone and heat. Yeah, cool. Okay, I want to thank everyone in the Zoomers for your comments, and I guess we can declare class over till next week. Next week will be solutions. We're going to take a trip around the world next week. We're going to see what we can do on a global basis that actually will work. So we're going to play a simulation game. Yes, Margaret.
Last time I told you that we're overpopulated by humans. The reason being, like I said, my daughter is survived by a psychologist. And she keeps saying that we're chasing or diminishing the violent population. And people don't realize it, that whenever we take all the trees down to build our more homes, the whole world will be taken over, and there are no animals left. And when the animals are gone, humans are gone.
Right. We're talking about the Margaret's adding the overpopulation problem and finding housing for everyone. But remember last week, Margaret, where I reported that the Center for Biological Diversity, a global group, conference of parties that met in Montreal not that long ago, came up with an agreement worldwide to save 30% of the planet by 2030. That's huge. So it kind of addresses that problem. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you very much. I'm going to come
Ellen,
back
thank
and
you for
collect.
another great session. We'll see you next week, everyone.